Hey everyone, let's start a reading vlog for Yume. I must say I know nothing about this book. I bought the book because Lindsay from Studio Lindsay was excited for it and I loved the cover. I may have known what the book was about or what type of book it was when I ordered it, but I have forgotten everything about it by now. I just think it's a stunning cover. It looks beautiful. It has an interesting title. Actually, I have no idea what the word means. Should look it up. Maybe I'll do that later. But I'm going into this completely blind. It's rather big, but I'm on vacation and I thought I'll take you along guessing what this book is about. It may be about food, because there's a lot of food on the cover. Anyways, I'll tell you when I started reading what actually happens. Finished chapter 1, and I'm struggling to find my way into the writing. It is very descriptive, and it gives off Studio Ghibli vibes, if that makes sense. It's probably brought on by the foreword mentioning anime, and also the clear mention of yokai, some form of Japanese monsters, I guess. It really feels a little bit like the movie Spirited Away, where you enter a different world. And the chapter ends with the main character, who doesn't really have a name yet, waking up, so he enters this world in his dreams. Intriguing, though. Chapter 2 takes a completely different turn. We meet a new character. I think she's African Canadian, working as an English teacher in Japan somewhere. And it sounds like she doesn't like it or enjoy it, and everybody stares at her, but it also sounds like she's done it for years. Very confusing. I don't really know what's going on, but it's about to be Halloween, and her contract ends. And I finished the next chapter in Yume. I think that's how it was pronounced, Yume. I finally looked it up, and if I didn't get it wrong, it's dream. So that makes sense. The chapter I just finished was focusing on the yokai, and we went to a restaurant with them. It's talking a lot about food and the general opinion the yokai have of the modern times and of foreigners, at least one of them. And we meet the character, the boy or young man from the first chapter again. And it's all sort of coming together a little bit, but not by far. I'm very curious to see how all these story parts will come together and work out to be whatever kind of story it is. I do have my troubles a little bit with the writing. I like the main concept of how the book is written and the ideas and the presentation. I also like the descriptions of things, but somehow they feel a little bit judgmental and like everything has an undertone to it, especially the chapters where talking about foreigners in Japan. And I'm not sure if that is on purpose, if that will be part of the story, if that is going this way or that way, or what direction it's going to take. I am not sure on that. I'm barely 60 pages into a 500 plus page book, so who knows what's going to happen. So far, it's enjoyable, even though I struggle reading with all the word looking up, and I will slow down on that. I'm pretty sure about that. And I also struggle with focusing, so I'm not sure how long I'll take to read the book and when something finally starts to happen. But so far, I'm enjoying it. Let's ignore bad hair. I didn't sleep much, but I finished the first part of Yume. And I am not completely sure what I feel about this book. We're still continuing this parallel narrative of one storyline following the yokai and the people around that, and the other storyline following the English teacher. And while I'm invested in the yokai and the characters around that storyline and everything that is happening in this parallel world to ours, I'm not really into the teacher story. I don't understand it. I understand that it's a Canadian working as an English teacher in a language school in Japan. I used to work in a language school here in Germany with a lot of foreign teachers or native speaker teachers to teach English. And the concept reminds me of the school type I used to work in, only that the school the teacher in the book is working for is for children, and a lot of the teachers are Japanese, and from what I understand, they have bad or little English. So for English teachers to have all the language issues that appear in the writing and in the conversations they have and that the author brings across, I find it very interesting that that is the language school and the managers, they seem to not always understand when the Canadian speaks colloquial or says something idiomatic. And that is very strange. I didn't make that experience. We used to have Germans and native speakers in my school. So the qualities or the rate of hiring was very high expectancy of English because they charge a lot, these schools. And it is a topic in the book that the school is struggling and that they really want to retain her. At the same time, she is not really part of the team. She feels like an outsider. There is this one scene with this kid that's really scared of her and keeps screaming. And that is part of what I think is going to be a theme of the book. Not only the foreigners in the country, but how foreigners are scary, especially her being an African Canadian from her skin. I don't know how old she is, but she has been accused of a scary old woman. So maybe she is older, but to a 3-year-old, everybody's old. So I don't know if she's really old or just appears older than the standard Japanese face. I don't know. But that's all scratch it. What I don't understand is her motivation to stay in Japan. She doesn't have friends. She's not really enjoying her job. She doesn't feel supported by the job. She doesn't really have a positive or good work relationship with, I'd say 90% of her colleagues. And she's been there for 6.5 years. She doesn't like being treated like the foreigner, how she's stared at and how people are scared of her or run away or spit at her or whatever is happening. All of that is very well described and probably atrocious if it really happens to people. I'm not saying anything against that or that it doesn't sound believable. What I don't understand is why she's staying there. No one makes her. It's not like she has a relationship that makes her stay in Japan. It's not like she has family that makes her stay in Japan. It's not like she couldn't go and be an English teacher anywhere else in the world. It isn't that hard for an English native speaker to find a job at an English language school abroad. So the motivation for her to be in this crappy situation and complain about it, that's what I don't get. I don't understand her character. I understand everything that's going on, and I have an idea where these two storylines could connect and how things could evolve there, how they could come together. But her motivation as a character is really not there, and that's bugging me. I don't know. I'll see what happens in part 2. I finished reading the second part, and some of the issues I had with the teacher character were addressed. They were not properly solved, in my opinion, or justified or explained, but they were addressed. And like I expected, those two storylines merged in the way that I thought they would. It was done quite okay. I'm not quite sure how the part ended and where it's going now. I find myself not completely invested in the writing. I find myself not completely invested in most of the characters. I find myself curious of how it's going to end. So I have about 130 pages and the last part left. I'm looking forward to see how all of this will come to an ending, how all of the things that are being addressed, not really, I don't really know. There is more of the xenophobia that was seen in the first part, in part 2. There is more of the struggles of bullying and being on the receiving end of xenophobia, how that is affecting the characters. There is more of that, but I don't know if that is the main topic or theme of the book. There's a lot more of the dream walking going on and a lot more of the worlds connecting and colliding and interweaving, but I'm not really sure what the book wants to tell me, which is bad because I've read 2/3 of the book. Anyways, I'll tell you what I think at the end. And I'm done. So let's have some final thoughts. The last part changed tone a little bit, and I really enjoyed that. I noticed that I enjoy the writing in that last part more, and I enjoyed where the story went, the characters, and also the ending. Overall, I must say this type of urban fantasy, of a crossover between the fantastic and the contemporary, I really enjoy reading. I particularly enjoyed this fantasy setting of demons and yokai and the dream world, which I haven't read much from, so that was fun to go into and dive into this world. I also enjoyed most of the plot lines, way it was done, the way the worlds collided and what was happening. I also enjoyed the ending, even though it is pretty open. But overall, the story itself, I enjoyed. What I noticed I had my trouble with to the end is the writing mostly. It's not particularly a writing that works well with me, so it might work well with others. But for me, a lot of the troubles I had getting into the characters and connecting well was a lot of the things that weren't necessary, and the way they were portrayed and the word choices in some parts and the sentences. So for me, what didn't really work well throughout the book was the xenophobia and the characterization or the characteristics for the teacher character. It didn't feel necessary and didn't make her a rounder character. So a lot of it felt off for me. And part of it was through the writing, through word choices, but also part of it was through what was written. And I don't know, at some point in the book, I had the feeling it was the author working her way through the bad experiences she had in Japan as a teacher. But I don't know. That's just an interpretation. And I have no idea if it's realistic how the xenophobia is portrayed. I cannot say anything to that either. It's just that in the story, it didn't feel necessary, or the way it was portrayed and put in there didn't work. So it felt off for me. But overall, as a debut novel, I think this is an interesting read. It's trying out new things, and I overall had a good experience with the book. I don't regret reading it. It's not a super fun book that I would recommend on many people, I admit that. But if you're interested in this type of urban fantasy crossover between dream world and fantastic creatures and the contemporary, give it a go. And that's the end of the blog. Thank you all for sticking to the end, watching me make my way through this book, my thought process, and whatever. Let me know if you've heard of Yume, if you are interested in it now, or if you read it, what your thoughts were and your experiences with the book. Thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.